Welcome back and prepare to be bedazzled, because today we're going to be shedding light on why people who are part of Generation Z and the Millennial generation that work for private sector employed jobs based on voluntary demand feel hopeless about their futures. So why has this calamitous predicament transpired in the lives of Zoomers and Millennials who acquiesce to working real private sector employed jobs based on voluntary demand? Without further ado, without further delay, without further procrastination, allow me to demystify that answer to that inquiry right here, right now. Lamentably, much to my dismay, much to my chagrin, much to my consternation, much to my grief, much to my agitation, and much to my irritation, most real private sector employed jobs based on voluntary demand are deemed to be dead-end, dispiriting, harrowing, agonizing, debilitating, ineffably wretched minimum wage jobs that do not provide employees with a payout that is anywhere close to even 1/4 of a subsistence wage for affording their basic need of housing. So, in other words, succinctly stated, if you work most real private sector employed jobs based on voluntary demand, and if that's your sole source of revenue, then it will provide you with a 0% chance to attain financial stability in tandem with a 0% chance to attain financial security. Most real private sector employed jobs based on voluntary demand not only pay an infinitesimal amount of fiat currency in the form of a minimum wage, but provide zero benefits and no pension. They do not provide a modicum of job security nor an iota of job stability, in spite of how much of a sedulous, diligent, competent job you do at any given moment. You could just get terminated from your real private sector employed job based on voluntary demand, and it can transpire abruptly on a whim. So, the cost of living is exorbitant, and this concomitantly causes the standard of living to precipitously plunge. People are undermining their earnings potential by working real private sector employed jobs based on voluntary demand, because it caps their earnings potential, it renders it fettered, and it provides them with a 0% chance to attain their utmost lowest level basic needs if the real private sector employed job based on voluntary demand is their only source of income. If you work a real private sector employed job based on voluntary demand, then it will aptly furnish you with a minimum wage if the employer does not renege on paying you for the time, energy, and mental bandwidth that you expended on his behalf. And it's problematic if you cannot afford housing, because it renders you more susceptible to succumb into hypothermia, which can cause you to prematurely lose your life. So, working most real private sector employed jobs based on voluntary demand is perilous due to them having hazardous working conditions. Most of them have lethal, brutal, hazardous working conditions that render you rather more prone to become maimed. If you work a real private sector job based on voluntary demand, it can render you prone to contracting floaters if strobe lights are incessantly gleaming in your eyes. You do not want your visual prowess to further wane. You do not want it to become abated. In addition to the aforementioned, they could also render you prone to contracting rotator cuff tears as well as plantar fasciitis. Moreover, they can also render you vulnerable to contracting varicose veins and tendinitis. The ceaseless, strenuous manual labor of lifting 50 to 75 pound objects without any downtime, and the constant repetitive stress motions render you highly susceptible to become maimed if you work most real private sector employee jobs based on voluntary demand. Now, not all of them have hazardous working conditions, but it would seem as though the vast majority of them lamentably do, even though they should never have hazardous working conditions. And even if you manage to survive working a real private sector employee job based on voluntary demand, and if you do so for a prolonged period of time, it's still going to provide you with a 0% chance to attain financial stability and financial security if it's your only source of income. And in the interim, as you're working it, you won't be able to afford to fund your utmost lowest level basic needs, because the payout it provides, which is a scintilla of fiat currency, will not be lofty enough to offset your recurring expenses. It will not be steep enough to cover the cost of obtaining your utmost lowest level basic needs. The minimum wage is not steep enough to even provide you with 1/4 of the requisite amount of purchasing power to be able to cover the cost of procuring an abode. So, when you work most real private sector employee jobs based on voluntary demand, you are working to maximize the wealth of the shareholders of the company and maximize the wealth of the executives of the company. A copious amount of chief executive officers earn over $165 million in compensation per year. A myriad of them earn over $80,000 per hour, and they want to be able to minimize their labor costs so that more money can trickle up to the executives and to the shareholders. When you work most real private sector employee jobs, it renders your earnings potential fettered, capped, and undermined, and is not conducive to generating significant wealth, because at the end of the day, it will only provide you with, at most, a negligible amount of fiat currency, which is not tantamount to you having the purchasing power of even 1/4 of a subsistence wage for affording your housing need. So Zoomers and Millennials feel hopeless about their financial futures because most of your private sector jobs based on voluntary demand offer negligible payouts. Thanks for watching.